never stays a day. A bad luck's always coming my way.
For today's grim adventure, we find ourselves at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Covina. Today we're going to be visiting the final resting place of a family of 9 who was sadly murdered Christmas Eve of 2008. The deaths became known as the Covina Massacre, or the Christmas Eve killing, or the Santa Claus murders. And here at this cemetery, the entire family is buried together. We've been walking around this cemetery looking at all these beautiful statues of families. And in the back of our minds, we know that we got to stop and we got to talk about this family that was sadly murdered on Christmas Eve. Now, for this, I'm not entirely sure how to go about telling this story. I mean, there's so many different details. You can go online, you can find all the details. I'm going to try to keep it to just the basics, really. Because really what I want to do is go over and pay our respects and take flowers to the family, to the 9 that are buried here.
Police and coroners located the last of the bodies this morning. A particularly difficult task after the intense fire that reduced the home to rubble. Police say Bruce Pardo dressed up in a Santa suit and went to the home of his ex-wife's parents, James and Alicia Ortega, where they were having their annual family Christmas party. There he began shooting, starting with the 8-year-old girl who opened the door. She was severely wounded.
Now try to picture this. Christmas Eve, everybody's joyful, everybody's having a nice time, a merry time, if you will. And sitting around the dining room table are Jose and Alicia, their daughter Sylvia, her 2 brothers and their wives, and her sister. And sometime before midnight, there's a knock at the front door. It's a little girl, an 8-year-old girl, who runs to the front door to answer it. And when she does this, she's greeted with Santa Claus. And just like any little kid on Christmas Eve, she is ecstatic. She starts screaming, "It's Santa Claus, it's Santa Claus." But in all actuality, it's Sylvia's now ex-husband, Bruce Pardo. He's dressed as Santa. And in one hand, he has a wrapped present, and in the other, he has a 9mm. And he shoots the 8-year-old girl in the face. She lives, she's still living, but he enters the house at this point, and he opens fire on everybody at the party.
This is already a horror story, and it doesn't even stop there. Inside that present, he was concealing a homemade flamethrower made with jet fuel. After the shooting, he tears open this present and uses it. But what he didn't count on were candles being lit in the home, and that starts a fire.
Now, while all of this is going on, the little girl who got shot in the face, her mother grabs her daughter and they run down the street to one of the neighbors' houses and they call 911. And the 911 tapes, these are them.
The chilling call to 911 reveals the Christmas Eve terror inside this Southern California home.
He's shooting. What's your address? Ma'am, I understand. I need to know your address.
The caller identifies herself as Letitia and says the gunman is her ex-brother-in-law, Bruce Pardo.
When he shot, I heard the shots and they were like poppers and I wasn't sure what it was, so we all everyone started panicking and running, so we all dove under the dining room. Some of us dove, some of us left, I don't know.
Letitia and her wounded 8-year-old daughter fled to a neighbor's home and called for help.
My daughter's been shot. She was shot in the face on the side and she's bleeding.
I know, I let the officers know. The officers are making sure it's safe for the paramedics to
I
come
need a
in.
bandage, please.
Her daughter is one of 3 injured survivors.
Please come immediately.
Who's in your house?
I don't know who else is alive.
I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay?
My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people.
I know.
A family wiped out by one man with no history of violence, who police say planned his attack in meticulous detail.
The fire was prematurely lit, and in doing so, he melted part of his own suit to his body. But because he used jet fuel stolen from his job and his homemade flamethrower, the fire was instant and everywhere, and it burned so hot.
The whole house burned down. The bodies of the family actually were burned so badly that they had to use dental records to identify them. And in doing so, they discovered another victim. So there was 8 family members in the dining room who tried to hide underneath the dining room table.
Yeah.
The 9th victim was a 17-year-old kid by the name of Michael, who was upstairs playing computer games. So Baby Goal, that's the 9 people that we're visiting today in the cemetery. And in all actuality, there's 10 people that died that day. The 10th person would have been Bruce Pardo. He actually left the scene, drove to his brother's house, and took his own life. Now, when the police caught up with this, when they figured everything out and they found his body, they also found the Santa suit, which he ripped off himself, threw it in the back seat, and he actually booby-trapped it. So whenever they tried to remove it, it was going to set off some ammunition.
Pardo then drove to his brother's house, where he shot himself. Police found explosives in his rental car there. It blew up while they were trying to defuse the bomb, but no one was injured. Pardo's murderous scheme may not have ended with his in-laws' party. He was carrying $17,000 in cash and an airline ticket to Canada.
He intended to commit this crime and then flee the country. What it appears is that he didn't anticipate injuring himself to the point where obviously he took his own life.
Pardo owed $10,000 to his ex-wife Sylvia after a bitterly contested divorce settlement signed just last week. Pardo had also recently lost his job at a military defense supplier. He had volunteered, as he did every year, to be an usher at his church's midnight mass on Christmas Eve. This year, he changed his mind.
That giant white building on the outside of the car, that is the Forest Lawn mortuary. And inside there, they have a flower shop. Now, Baby Girl, what did you get inside?
I decided to get a bouquet of roses for the family. Normally, there's a strict schedule that cemeteries adhere to when they discard old flowers and celebrations for the holidays. We've just entered the new time slots for that.
Like the Christmas time slot.
Yeah, so they won't be thrown away tomorrow, which is nice. So I thought I'd get a memento for the family. We're here on the hillside where all the markers are, which is nice that it's by this tree. Down at the bottom, here is Sherry and Charles. Sylvia. Joseph says no to his grandpa. That's so sweet. Alicia, Bama. Michael. And also Alicia. And then up here at the top, this is Teresa. And James. I do have some roses left and baby's breath and such, and I think I'm going to leave it here with Sylvia, Joseph, and Alicia. And I pronounce it Bampa and Bama, going off of like grandpa and grandma. I might have the pronunciation wrong, but that's what instinctually came to mind.
So Joseph and Alicia were the mom and dad, the patriarch and the matriarch.
Yeah.
And Sylvia was the wife.
They're all stuck together.
You're gonna leave them as well?
Yeah. It gets windy up here on the hill. Maybe it'll help them to not roll away. And not to forget Charles and Sherry. Or Cherie or Cherry. I know it can be pronounced so many different ways. May they all rest in peace.
Pretty wild, right? An entire family here.
I can't imagine burying a loved one around the holidays, but nonetheless burying so many.
In loving memory, Sylvia Ortega, beloved daughter, sister, mother, and friend. July 5th, 1965 to December 24th, 2008. Joseph and Alicia, Bampa and Bama, they're the ones who were throwing the Christmas party for their family. It was supposed to be a happy time. And this is Michael, the kid who was upstairs on the second floor playing computer games. The only one who wasn't shot died in the fire. So this is Alicia Ortiz, Mammy, and it's a little odd that it says December 25th. Charles and Sherry. And lastly, James and Teresa. The more you look into what happened that night, Christmas Eve 2008, you start to realize that Bruce Pardo really had this elaborate escape plan. I mean, he's been planning this for quite some time, but him getting hurt, burned, the Santa suit melting to parts of his body, kind of changed everything. So from here, he gets in his rental car and he drives 40 miles to his brother's house. Right now we are walking down Herrick Street, which is just a couple blocks away from where Bruce Pardo ultimately took his life. And we know this because the crime report says that he parked his rental car a couple blocks away. But I couldn't find an address, so we just kind of Google Street Viewed until we found what we were looking for. And what we were looking for in the crime scene photos is this portion of the wall right down here. Now, let's see here. If I back up a little bit into the street. So you can see the curve of this wall, that house to the left, but more importantly, you see this little ranch house over here? You see that little design right there? In this picture, right here, this is where Bruce Pardo parked his blue Dodge Caliber. And in the seat next to him was the charred Santa suit. Now, like I said, Bruce Pardo had a very elaborate plan of escape. He was trying to think of everything. And backup plan, if you will. I mean, he knew that he was wounded pretty badly and there was no escaping. I mean, he bought plane tickets, and it's crazy the more you look into it. But the Santa suit, he had it rigged in such a way that if it was to be removed, that the car would explode. So the police, they came, they had a bomb squad come out and check it out, and eventually, I mean, the car did go up in flames right here where I'm standing.
Pardo was severely injured during that explosion. He suffered third-degree burns on both arms. It also appears that the Santa Claus suit that he was wearing did melt onto his body.
Pardo then drove to his brother's house, where he shot himself. Police found explosives in his rental car there. It blew up while they were trying to defuse the bomb, but no one was injured. Pardo's murderous scheme may not have ended with his in-laws' party. He was carrying $17,000 in cash and an airline ticket to Canada.
He intended to commit this crime and then flee the country. What it appears is that he didn't anticipate injuring himself to the point where obviously he took his own life.
Pardo owed $10,000 to his ex-wife Sylvia after a bitterly contested divorce settlement signed just last week.
Here's a close-up shot of the Santa Claus suit in the car before it was detonated. And again, this is the angle right here. Here's the blue Dodge Caliber before it went up in flames, and here it is completely charred. It's things like this that just kind of get you, but then there's something else to think about. I mean, why right here? Why this far? I mean, it's probably like 5 blocks away from where his brother lived, right in front of some houses. But what I find very interesting is, I mean, he was wounded, he was burned. He took the Santa suit off, and he got out of the car and he walked right up this road here. It's Excelsior Street, about 5 blocks to where his brother was living. It's not a far walk, but from where Bruce Pardo parked his rental car to the house where he walked to, his brother's house where he took his own life, it's really not that far. But take into consideration that his legs, I think it was, had 3rd-degree burns because of the Santa suit melting to his body. It had to have been excruciating. And he probably would have made this walk right after midnight. Nobody would have known anything. And this house right over here, I'm gonna go ahead and cross the street. This is 15835. This is where his brother lived. And when his brother came home, he found his brother, Bruce Pardo, on the living room couch. He shot himself. And he called the police, and then the stories really started coming together. Doing videos like these always make me a little nervous because you never really know how the community is going to feel about it. I mean, those who've lived here quite some time, they see you walking around with a camera, they know what you're here for, and other people, not so much. While I was here filming this, both down where Bruce Pardo parked his car to this, a couple of people asked me what I was doing. They had no clue, so I kind of filled them in and they were a little shocked, especially being this close to the holidays. Now, as far as I can tell, I did some digging. There's really no pictures of the outside of this house. There are a few different pictures on the backside. There's an alleyway, and that is where we're heading now. Again, there's really no photograph of the front of the house or of Bruce's body that I could find online. Nothing of real significance. The only thing that I could find was taken back here in the alleyway whenever the coroner removed Bruce's body. So you see this black gate right up here? This is on the back side of Brad Pardo's house. And if I come down this way and turn a little bit, looking up, from right about here, you can see them carrying his body out. This black gate retracts into the wall. And that's it. Well, like I said, the more you look into this, the crazier it gets. Now, while all of this was going on, the house was still burning with the 9 people inside it. And I feel like even though the house is completely gone and a new house is built there, it's probably where we should end this video. About 10 minutes away from the cemetery on Knollcrest Drive is where the family was having their Christmas party. The address was 1129 East Knollcrest Drive. Like I said, the house is completely different, and it looks like it's on a cul-de-sac, like there's no through street. So I'm not entirely sure what's gonna happen when we get up there. So that's why we're down here. We really are not gonna spend much time here. But this is the house that now stands at 1129. And if you go online, I'm gonna share some photos here of the destruction after the fire, but if you go online, you can find a whole bunch of different pictures. And it's just standing here. You can see that telephone pole way off in the distance. You can see that same one in the pictures. Just over this way, I'm going to try to move over just a little bit. You can see some, I guess they're called cypress trees in the back. You can see some of those. Crazy, right? Very sad. In preparation for this video, I watched the news clips and listened to the 911 calls countless times, and to me, it's still pretty surreal. Well, with that being said, thank you for joining us on a grim Christmas adventure. Until next time, happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard